What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, which it's a great day to be, by the way, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation, fellow Utah Ute fans, Arizona State fans, Arizona fans, Colorado fans. Welcome in to a live edition of Couz's Corner. I'm going to pour out some shots today, folks, of college football content, top shelf content, I might add. And to help me do that is going to be a special guest, Mr. Philip, also known as WildUte. How you doing today, WildUte?
What's up? How you doing, Couz? It's a great day out here in Salt Lake City and Ute land and everything.
Absolutely.
So excited about this move to the Big 12. It is so cool. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the conference, man. We're glad to have Utah in the league. We're getting a great brand, a great football program. I won't say great basketball program, but a passionate fan base.
Yeah.
Folks like yourself who I know love Utah sports. And we have the Holy War in the Big 12 now, which is an absolute home run for this conference, in my opinion. There's nothing that makes better football and more exciting football, or basketball for that matter, or any sport, than a rivalry. And there's not many more rivalries that are more heated than the Holy War. And I've been able to learn a lot more about that rivalry by watching you and Big 12 Mafia. But speaking of which, tell everybody where they can find you at.
Yeah, for sure. So Big 12 Mafia and I do a show, The Holy Rivals, Monday nights and also on Saturday afternoons. And we're talking Utah, BYU sports. We were talking Pac-12, Big 12, but hey, guys, we're under the Big 12 brand now. It is wild and everything. So this season, we're going to be talking Pac-12 content still, because the Utes are going to be in the Pac-12 for one last season, the last season of the Pac. And then we're going to get to talking about a lot of football stuff. And down the line, man, we're going to be talking a lot of Big 12 football, because that's where we're all at. We'll be having folks on. We'll be really analyzing a lot of Big 12 games, basketball and football. So super exciting.
Yeah.
The Holy Rivals.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for that. And you can find him on Twitter at WildUte, as is on the screen there. And you can find me at Couz206. And if you also go check out Big 12 Mafia at B12 Mafia. He's taking the weekend off. He had a death in his family, so he's taking care of that and spending time with family this weekend. So all thoughts and prayers out to Nathan over at Big 12 Mafia and his family. Guys, I want to take care of a little bit of house cleaning here before we get into the conversation. I want to give a shout out to this channel sponsor, Dutch Miller Automotive. This episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com, or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. And by the way, guys, they also have locations for you Big 12 fans who might be in Kansas. They have a location in El Dorado, Kansas. They also have locations in Bristol, Tennessee, Charlotte, North Carolina, Wytheville, Virginia, and I'm sure they may even have other locations that I'm not aware of. So go check them out at DutchMillerAuto.com to learn where exactly you can find your closest Dutch Miller location, and check them out for all your automotive needs. Let's get into it.
Man.
First off, I got a couple super chats already, guys. Thank you for the love here. Do you call it Four Corner Pod or Pack Pod?
I love the Pack Pod, right?
That's pretty interesting. Thank you, John Teal, for the super chat, my man.
No, but John brings up a good point here. Let's jump on that real quick. Is the pod going to be BYU, Utah, Arizona State, or are we going to throw Colorado in that pod? I mean, can we make a 5 pod here, or do we need? I don't know. There's a lot of different variations. We got 16 teams. We need to get to 20, I guess, to do a 5 pod.
Right.
But I would imagine that's coming in the future, because really the ACC, I'm telling you guys, the ACC teams are going to be falling apart. They're going to be falling into the laps of this conference right here. And this is the 3rd super conference. Don't get that wrong. That's what happened yesterday, is the formation of the 3rd super conference. And that's where we're here. The Utes are in it. West Virginia's in it. Stoked to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to get into the scheduling discussion here in a minute. That's one of the things I want to talk about today, actually, is how the scheduling looks going forward. Also want to address a super chat from Zesty's Retro and Games. Thank you, Zesty's Retro and Games, for being in here. He says, or he or she says, I can't wait for Arizona versus Kansas basketball 24. That will definitely be an exciting basketball. This league, man, I'm telling you, is going to be one. It's already the top basketball league in America, in my opinion. Bringing Arizona in we brought Houston in, who's a powerhouse. Cincinnati has had a great basketball program over the years. And now there's talks that they could be looking to bring in Gonzaga, maybe even UConn as basketball-only schools.
Yeah.
This league going forward, and guys, look, we know Brett Yormark has talked about it ad nauseum about wanting to make this basketball conference even better, and he wants to spin off the TV deals between the two sports. And, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Everything Brett Yormark has wanted to do, he's been able to do. So I will never doubt Brett Yormark again. Not that I have in the first place, but, the guy's just I don't know that I've seen anybody be able to achieve. Within a year, basically, he's done Big 12 media deal, jumped the packing line. He got the buyout accomplished with Texas and Oklahoma to get them out early. He's scheduled Big 12 games in Mexico, which was on his radar. He did an event at Rucker Park in New York, which was on his radar. And now he's added the Four Corner Schools, which was also on his radar. So, those are pretty big accomplishments, especially the Four Corner Schools edition and the TV deal. So, what are your thoughts as a new member of the Big 12? What are your thoughts on Brett Yormark as a commissioner?
Well, let's back up and look at George K. Here. What's he done over the last year? You just named all Yormark's accomplishments, but
yeah.
George K struggled to get a media rights deal. He hasn't communicated properly, didn't set right expectations, and lost the league. So looking at Brett Yormark, it's a 180. What a stud Brett Yormark is. He's a complete baller. He gets stuff done. He is a futuristic leader, innovative. I love the idea of going down to Mexico for games. I love the idea of Rucker Park, expanding this thing out. And, as a Ute fan, what the heck is he going to do with the Holy War? Seriously, what could he do with the Holy War to make it a huge game? It's going to feel like the Super Bowl. I'm super excited about that because we really need some juice over here in Salt Lake City and everything. And the juice for a long time was with the USC, actually, but USC obviously last year. Now bringing that back with BYU and just a massive game in the Holy War, an impossible pod with, who knows, implications, playoff implications maybe down the line. It's going to be psycho. It's going to be awesome. So, yeah, Yormark is the man, and I trust him.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw something out here. This is just me thinking outside the box and on a whim. And I know how much he likes these big cities. Why not make the Holy War? Why not move it to Vegas? Play at a neutral site in Vegas. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he should rotate Vegas, then Rice-Eccles Stadium, Lavelle Edwards, BYU Stadium. And also in Salt Lake City, there's this weird thing that's between Utah and BYU. And it's right next to like the big aquarium. It's this huge awkward claw. It's called the Claw out here. There's been a lot of talks that we want to play a game under this huge claw just to make it
awesome,
real weird and awkward and everything. So
yeah.
The Claw, Vegas, Rice-Eccles, wherever, man, it's going to be big.
Yeah, you don't want to take out. There's nothing like a home field rivalry game in football, so you definitely don't want to lose that completely. But Brett Yormark's always thinking about new ways to make money. So if he can move that game somewhere, and even Mexico, we could see him playing in Mexico at some point.
Absolutely, and I'm thinking this too, kind of sidestepping. Seriously, that backyard brawl is closer than ever, in my view. And I know we're probably not going to get too deep in those ACC discussions in this discussion here, but seriously, just think about that backyard brawl and what it could do, bringing that in-house too, and having the Holy War, the backyard brawl with the other rivalries. It's going to be awesome. And that is coming. It sure looks like it. It feels like that, right? Like Pitt probably looking at the Big 12,
Potentially. It'd be a great ad. And we, all of us West Virginia fans want more Eastern schools. It's one of the reasons I'm on board with bringing UConn in. It makes life so much easier, especially if you end up going to a pod system. Right now, the most reasonable pod I've seen, it was West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. At first I thought, why Houston? But if you look at where Houston's located in Texas, I think Houston is actually a closer trip for UCF than anyone else in the league. because they just fly right across the Gulf and boom, they're there. So that might be why. And plus, you've got the UCF Houston rivalry from the AAC. The playing in there, so that might be a reason. But that one makes sense. At first, I thought maybe putting Iowa State in a pod with UCF and Cincinnati, but that's a long trip for UCF. And then you've got it would put Iowa State at a major disadvantage. And to me, them being a legacy member of the league from way back, I don't think you shouldn't do that to them. That's just my opinion.
Keep Iowa State with KU and K-State.
Yes.
Right? They really need to be in that pod based on the legacy.
Agreed.
Once this conference gets to 20, and it's going to get to 20, it's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. There's going to be all type of different arrangements and everything. And hopefully legacy pods can be built that are more regional, more competitive and everything. And it's just exciting to see where that's going to go. I mean, it's big time football. But I think Iowa State, K-State, and KU, maybe Colorado. I don't know. But those in Oklahoma State, in a pod.
Right. Got another super chat here from Cody Cutright, who, by the way, is also a channel member of the VIP club here at Couz's Corner. Cody, thank you for your support, my man. He says, seen something about Oregon State and UConn. I also saw that. I've even seen something that Stanford, I think it was MHVER3, who apparently, a lot of people have given a hard time through this, but I'm telling you, folks, he's been pretty accurate on most of his projections. People can throw shade at him all they want to, but he's been pretty doggone accurate. And I think he's the one who put out that Stanford has actually reached out to the Big 12 now. So I personally am I would not be excited about bringing Stanford in. I think they are totally a fish out of water in the Big 12, more so than any other team would be. I don't know that they fit culturally, but they do bring value to the league. I don't doubt that, but I just don't think they'd be a good fit. But yeah, you never know. Oregon State could end up coming in order, because Brett Yormark has been wanting to get into that specific time zone, and we're not there yet. Even with the teams we've added, we're still in the Mountain Time zone. So there's the argument that Arizona's in it part of the year, but I think Arizona did away with their Eastern Standard or Daylight Savings Time, if I'm not mistaken, which would mean that they may not be in the Pacific time zone anymore. I'm not sure how that works. Do you know anything about that, WildUte?
Yeah, so Arizona's in a different time zone. Yeah, so they don't practice daylight savings. So you're actually getting them in the Pacific time zone until, I believe, November. So really, you're getting that time zone for a few months in the football season. So you're kind of getting like, a California-based or like a coast-based school in Arizona. And it's weird because Utah doesn't practice that at all. Utah's on daylight savings. So it's just a little bit of quirk with Arizona, but they could start later. That's the big idea there. It's like the games can be, Big 12 after dark games. And that's what's Arizona State, Utah, BYU, Colorado get ready for a lot of late night games. That's just going to happen. I mean, we're used to that. Yeah. That's going to be a value add for the conference.
I mean, do you guys like that, though? Do you like those?
Sucks. So I hate late night games, Couz. Like, I'm a season ticket holder at the Utes. Like, you get to the game, it starts at 8:30 at night, and then you don't get home till 1 or 1:30 in the morning. Yeah. Like, and so it's no fun at all and stuff. And like, I mean, it might be fun for like the college kids and everything, but all the alums and fans and everything. It's like, I don't want to be staying up till 2 in the morning, right after a football game. So there's a lot of griping about that. And USC hated that. That's one of the reasons, many reasons that they were looking to get out, because they hated those late night spots, and plus visibility isn't great.
I have news for them. I think they're going to end up with it again.
You think so? You think USC is going to be a late night?
Potentially. I mean, I'm sure they won't be on late night every week, but I mean, they just brought in Oregon and Washington. They're going to have 4 teams now in that time zone. Yeah. Why else would they do that, in my opinion, right?
Well, definitely. I think that you're definitely going to get UCLA, Oregon, and Washington in that late night spot more often than USC, because USC was squawking so much about it. It was a huge deal for those guys. They're going to be on sometimes, but I bet the Ducks are going to be on like every week, though, right? Seriously, that's going to be their fate.
John Teal, thank you for another super chat. He says Texas, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, BYU. I guess in a pod is what he's saying. Yeah. That makes sense. That's a 5-team pod. I know what he's saying. A Texas pod, an Arizona State, Utah, BYU pod, Oklahoma State, Colorado, Kansas, and Kansas State in a pod, and then an East pod.
Yeah. I want to crack at Texas Tech. All you Texas Tech fans out there, I mean, you guys have given it on Twitter so much over the last 6 months to a year, especially to me.
They talk a lot of trash, man.
I love you guys, but seriously, I wanted to used to be in a pod with the Red Raiders. I really want to crack at those guys so bad. But it's fun. The juice in the Big 12 is completely different than the Pac. I mean, like just the Twitter dialogues and everything, and like the fan support. That's one of the fun things about going over to the Big 12. It just changes everything. And it just brings a lot more excitement because when Utah was playing teams like a Cal or Stanford, right? Like, I mean, there just wasn't any juice to those games. Like in Cal and Stanford, no one would show up to their stadiums, no matter who was coming there. They could have the number one team in the nation coming there and they still wouldn't sell out. And so adding, even like teams like Texas Tech and TCU, bringing that TCU rivalry back in house and stuff, because Utah had that with TCU in the Mountain West days. It's just fun. And there's a lot of juice.
Absolutely. By the way, guys, if you want to interact with WildUte, you can find him over on Twitter at WildUte, WILDUTE. Go check him out. Go follow him. You can find me at Couz 206 if you want to interact with us. But John, I like your idea there. The only disagreement I would have there is, like I said a minute ago, I don't think it's fair to Iowa State, who's been a longtime member of this league, to put them in a pod with West Virginia, UCF, and Cincinnati. I think you're asking them to travel way more than is fair. And I'm a West Virginia fan, so who am I to talk about fair travel, right? But West Virginia, we've been in this league 11, 12 years. Iowa State's been in it since its inception, is my understanding. So I think it would be a little bit crappy, for lack of a better term, to put them in a pod with us. I wouldn't mind it. I like playing Iowa State, but I don't. I think it'd be more fair to them to put them in a pod with Kansas State, Kansas, maybe Oklahoma State, somebody like that. Just my opinion, but who knows how this thing will shake out? It'll be interesting to watch and see how it plays out. For sure.
Your East pod here is going to be UCF, Cincy, West Virginia. And then the idea is Iowa State.
I'm assuming that's what he's saying because they're the only one not listed. You would have Houston, TCU, Texas Tech, and Baylor in a pod, according to John's idea.
And we need to pull up a map just to look at the map here. Like seriously, just to look at the distance traveled. I mean, this makes the more we talk about it, it's like this ACC breakup thing becomes more and more important. It really is necessary. Like in bringing teams like Virginia Tech and NC State, and it just makes such easy regional access, travel, and everything. I think that
I wish I don't have anything to pull up at the moment, but you're right. It would definitely be. I mean, I've looked at multiple maps, and there's a huge gap. I mean, a huge gap in the in that eastern, midwestern part of the country, or whatever you want to call it, mid Atlantic part of the country. I guess would be the best way to phrase it. I know Memphis fans would love to be in the Big 12. That would help fill that gap. But I just don't know at this point. And I hate to say this, no offense to my group of five fans out there, but I don't know the group of five schools get in a Power Five conference anymore. I think those days may be over, with the exception of maybe the Pac. The Pac may go add some teams, but I think I look more for those teams to be absorbed by someone else, to be honest with you, versus rebuilding that conference. What do you think about that, WildUte? Do you think the Pac rebuilds, or do you think those teams end up splitting away and going to other leagues?
Yeah, if there were more teams left, I would say that I would rebuild, but it's so depleted that I think they have to jump to the Mountain West. I mean, there's here's the problem, Couz, is like if you leave the Mountain West to go to the Pac, you have to pay that exit fee, that massive exit fee of like $30 million plus. Like who in the Mountain West is going to do that now to go to the Pac? I mean, the money's. Here's the sad thing is the money's not going to be that much different probably. Like, we're talking about like before yesterday, we're talking about anywhere from $20 to $30 million for Pac, like a contract for Oregon, Utah, and everybody in it. Now that's probably like what, $10 million per school now?
Something like that, yeah. 9, 10.
If you look at the Mountain West, I mean, the distributions, I believe, are, between 5 and 10. So you're really right there. And so the exit fee doesn't make sense anymore. You can't make it work. So you have to go over to the Mountain West. So I really see Stanford really going independent or really making a push to get in the Big Ten. I just have a hard time seeing Stanford going to the Mountain West. So here's a little inside perspective from a Pac fan and like a Pac fan from the mountain. I went to Utah in the Mountain West days, so I've got that perspective. But Stanford, like within the Pac itself, there was kind of like a hierarchy of of maybe like academic eliteness, if you want to call it that, right? And I know a lot of Big 12 fans really disliked Ute fans because of the academic conversation and everything else. But that was actually going on inside the conference too, because Cal Berkeley, Stanford, and USC, UCLA, all were kind of a different cut above really everybody else. Washington's an elite academic institution. So there was almost like a hierarchy within the hierarchy in the Pac. And so Stanford was already kind of feeling that way with the Pac schools, let alone going to the Mountain West or anywhere else. So I just have a possible time seeing them integrate into anywhere outside the Big Ten. Doesn't really make any sense based on my experience with Stanford, right? So I could see them go Indy, independent, or to the Big Ten if they get an invite. Cal's an interesting one, though. Cal's tricky because Cal is has that same type of mindset as Stanford, but they're probably not going to get a Big Ten invite. And so what do they do? Do they go independent? Can they go independent? Do they go to the Mountain West? That's going to be a humble pie piece for them to accept. I think Oregon State, Washington State are more easy, just jumps to the Mountain West. They don't want to, but there's no choice. They can integrate and they could thrive in the Mountain West, actually. But Cal and Stanford are curious cases.
Yeah. Speaking of Stanford, John Teal, thank you for the super chat again, my man. He says he disagrees with me that they're not a culture fit. He says, have you ever been in a football locker room? All types of characters, LOL, you look in that Bay Area, lock in that Bay Area. Yeah, I get that, John, and I do understand too that. But I'm looking at the culture overall of the state, the fan base, the region. And look, I don't want to get into politics too much here, but when you look at the politics of the Big 12, most of the Big 12 states are red states for the most part versus Stanford. Think about that, But I also understand, Colorado is a bit of a bluish, purplish. I'd call it a purple state, I guess. Yeah. We're already starting to get across, kind of merge those two together to a degree anyway. So maybe it wouldn't be as big a deal to bring them in. Do you think Stanford would be a good add, WildUte, to the Big 12?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I think Stanford's I think they're a horrible ad for the Big 12. Culturally, it doesn't make any sense at all, guys. And you just nailed it, Couz. It's political. Look at the mission of Stanford and Cal Berkeley, the mission statements of the schools versus a lot of the Big 12 schools. Doesn't align. There's so many things that just don't match there that I can see there'd be clashes the whole time. I just don't see there being any fit at all. So I think Stanford and Cal really are probably no-goes for the Big 12. I mean, the Utes, being in the state of Utah and stuff, there's a pretty conservative culture here. So we're fit really kind of in both places. Same thing with Arizona and Colorado to a degree too. But I think when you get out to, Oregon, Washington, Cal, I don't think there's that fit anymore.
It's a whole different ballgame. Yes, I agree with that. And that stuff matters, folks, whether we want to admit it or not. And you touched on the academic piece earlier. And I know most Big 12 fans don't like to talk about the academics, but whether we like it or not, that stuff matters to a lot of these university presidents. And I don't think Big 12 fans, at least I haven't seen it enough on social media. I've only seen a couple people post about it, but we drastically improved the academic standing of our conference yesterday. Big time. We added 4 AAU, or not just yesterday, but last week. We added 4 AAU schools to our conference, guys. And if I'm not mistaken, all 4 of them are top. Anyway, they're all, I don't want to try to guess on the numbers, but they're all pretty highly ranked academic schools for the most part. So we really improved our conference from an academic standpoint. And at some point, I'm hoping to do a video on that, comparing the conferences or the schools now, looking at the Big 12 schools now versus before, and where all the schools fit. But that's another day, another conversation. But I don't want to gloss over that. John Teal, back to another super chat. He says, and this is back to his scheduling argument. He says, my pod and lock in 2 rivalry games for Iowa State with KU and Kansas. Yeah, that might work.
That works.
That might work.
One more thought on Cal and Stanford. I don't think that they're financially accretive to the Big 12. So what that means is there's like this bar right here. Okay, this pencil's a bar and stuff. This is the $31.7 million that every school is going to get in the Big 12. Does your brand go above that bar to bring more to the existing schools, or does it fall below the bar? Stanford and Cal, they fall below that bar. And that's not the only thing that matters, but that's massive in this too. And because they can't sell out their stadiums, because their brands are pretty weak football-wise, I just don't see them bringing that much value. And here's case in point. How much are they going to get in the pack right now? Like they're going to get what we talked about, maybe like $10 million a year if they survived or brought some teams in somehow. Like they just don't really bring a lot of value. So it'd actually be a value drain for the Big 12 payout-wise, outside of just culture fit. So I just don't see it happening.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. I just don't see, even if Stanford's called the Big 12, I don't see the Big 12 bringing them in. But I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe if they come in on the cheap, maybe Brett Yormark, wants that Western time zone so bad that he brings them in. Mm-hmm. I hope he doesn't, to be honest. But, we'll see. It'll definitely be interesting.
Isn't it pretty amazing where the Big 12's at right now? Like we're having a conversation about bringing Stanford, one of the elite institutions in the world, possibly into the Big 12 at a reduced payout. Yep. That's the state of things, y'all. That's how reality has changed over the last 24 hours. That's nuts. Like we're talking about Stanford here. This isn't just anybody, but that's the reality of how the finances work and everything. And it's just amazing how things have shaken out.
Yep. All right, let me get to some super chats here. We've got I got a lot today. Thank you guys. You're being generous. Super sticker from Joel Harris. Joel, thank you for the support, my man. We appreciate you being here. Appreciate you supporting the show. Brandon Morris, 1999. I didn't see a comment to go along with your super chat, Brandon. I'll go back through the chat room and see if there's anything there, buddies, and try to address it, okay? Big Dan T, channel member, and also the 1999 super chat. Big Dan T is a club level VIP member here at Couz's Corner. That's the second level, $4.99 level. But he says, I think making any pods before the expansion is done is premature because I'd like to see maybe VT Pitt like y'all mentioned. Agreed, Big Dan T. I agree that now is probably a little early. But even if you make them now, doesn't mean you can't go back and change them around if we add more teams, because I don't think that ACC thing is going to take place immediately. I think it's going to be a few years down the road because there's going to be a lot of legal hurdles to overcome that, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I just don't see those ACC teams coming on board immediately. I think it'll be a while. What do you think about that, WildUte?
Oh, man. Yeah, I think that it could be sooner than we think. And it's all contingent upon Florida State. If Florida State really does get out of the ACC in one way, shape, or form, challenges the Gore, and causes much unsettling there, then I think that there's just going to be, it's just like with the Pac, how everyone just jump off the ship and panic, right? It just happened, guys. So I think that the same thing is going to happen. Once Florida State's out, that's your best brand. That's your USC. And so it's unsteady, and people are going to look for stability, and the Big 12 is stability. So schools are going to look at that. So the SEC and the Big 10, they're going to eat first, as Greg Flugar always says, right? They're going to have priority, but then the Big 12 is going to be next in line after that. And you're going to look at brands like a Pitt and maybe a Virginia Tech if they're there, and you're going to add those schools and get to the 20, maybe even 24 if you choose to do so. So I think that maybe timelines, it could break within the next year, maybe sooner.
Yeah, you never know. I never dreamed this would happen. So you know what? It could happen tomorrow. Who knows? Heck, it could happen. That August 15th date is looming out there to where that's the date ACC teams have to announce they're leaving the conference in order to get out by 2024. So if we get to August 15th and don't hear anything, then we're going to be at least another year out probably before anything pops. Now you could hear rumors and you could hear some reporting on it or whatever, some leaks, but as far as it actually happening, I think we'd be at least a year out if we get to August 15th and nothing happens.
Yep.
Big Dan T, another super chat, man. Thank you for the generosity. He says, Utah has always been my favorite Western team, so I'm looking forward to going to a game out there.
Oh, yeah, we'll treat you right. There's actually a really good tailgate in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. It's a little bit different atmosphere than Lavelle Edwards Stadium, just based on the schools. There's a lot that goes into that. But the Utes really they bring a lot to the tailgate, so we'll treat you right out here and stuff, and we'll share a beer with you guys.
Yeah, Joel, if you want to, Joel, I don't know if you meant to leave a comment with your super chat, man. But if you did, I missed it. If you want to put it back in the comment section, I'll try to see it this time. I'll be on the lookout for it, man. It's just there's so many comments I can't keep up.
Yeah,
John
shout
Teal.
out to the comment section. Seriously, we've got around 200 comments so far.
Oh, it's awesome, man. We got 422 people on here. We thank everybody for coming on here. Make sure you hit the like button. It'll help get even more people in. Let's get this thing, as they like to say, crunk. Let's get it crunk in here, folks.
Let's get crunk.
Let's get crunk.
What are you drinking out there? Come on, Couz.
Joe ever think you'd hear a Western hillbilly say the word crunk? Oh, man. John Teal says, I know he's watching. GBD, you were right. Hey, GBD caught a lot of this, guys. He caught a lot of it. He took a lot of flack for it, too, but he's having a blast right now watching all this stuff happen, man.
Yeah, Golden Blue, dude, rest in peace. Yeah, he would be loving this stuff. Oh, man, that's it's tough to think about, with all the shit.
Somebody sent me a video that he did 4 months ago, which couldn't have been long before he passed.
Yeah,
because he just passed in April.
Yeah,
about the Colorado thing, and he predicted Colorado would leave, and either Arizona or Arizona State, and that would be it. But man, it went even further beyond what he envisioned.
You know what I loved about Golden Blue, dude? I loved how he brought hope to fans and stuff. I'm thinking of fans like your San Diego States, your Memphis, your non-A5 fans, because you have hope that your school can get into a conference. Maybe it's this idea to get there and everything. So I think he was a hope builder and just fun too, right? But I always kind of got that vibe when I was watching his videos too, that he's going to bring in hope to fan bases and dreams. So yeah, definitely rest in peace.
Greg Swayman in the house. He says ESPN does not want the publicity of 8 or more ACC teams suing them, so this could be wrapped up fast. That's a good point, Greg. Hadn't thought about that. It's terrible PR for them too, for the ACC and ESPN.
Greg, what do you think timelines are for that? Yeah, in the chat, I'm curious for that because it seems like it's going to be less than a year, but it could be seriously within a month for all we know. So things break up quick.
Vernon Sheldon Witter's in the chat. He's also a channel member. Let me see what he has to say. He says FSU will get sued out of their minds. Yep, that's what I'm afraid of. But I'm sure there'll be countersuits too.
Couz, did you see that JP Morgan information about FSU?
I did.
No one's really broken that out because of all the stuff that happened yesterday, but that is really kind of a strange setup. That JP Morgan would want to be what's known as an equity partner in the athletic department somehow, or with Florida State football. And they'd want to get a piece of the media rights that come into Florida State. If I'm the Big Ten, if I'm the SEC, why in the world would I let JP Morgan get a chunk of my media rights, right? Or, there's a lot of nuance there that we don't understand. We've never seen anything like that before, but I'm not sure that's from my perspective, it makes sense that JP Morgan would give Florida State a loan they could pay back, and then they pay what they need to pay to get out of the ACC. But being an equity partner or part owner in their athletic revenues, the athletic department, we don't know every in and out, but that just doesn't make any sense because Florida State.
Strange, isn't it? It's very strange. And I'll tell you, I heard talk yesterday, and this is all speculation. We don't know what's going to happen. But we see how much. Look at LIV Golf, for example. Look at ML or look at professional soccer. Look at what the Saudis have been trying to do. The Saudis want into American sports, and they want in big time. Now they're looking mainly at professional sports, but who's to say the Saudis don't come up with money to try to help Florida State or something? That's totally out there. But they even talked about that yesterday on 365 Sports. When you start talking about these hundreds of millions of dollars here. Who else has got it, right? because Paul Catalina, who's a big Florida State, he's a Florida State alum, and he was talking about how he loves Florida State football. He said, outside of my family and my friends, there's nothing I love more, but I would not love it as much if they have Saudi money paying for their athletic department.
Like one thing that's just really boggles my mind is schools are set up and athletic departments as nonprofit entities. They're not for profit, right? And they're set up like in the States. And then all of a sudden, if you get an investor like JP Morgan or like a Saudi investor, that changes the whole complexion of everything. I don't know how they even would buy in and own like an ownership piece to that. There's all type of, it doesn't make any sense to me, the type of structure. Loans, big loans to Florida State for their athletic department makes sense. Right. Really interested to see how that works, because that's going to be a move that many other schools are going to probably go to in the future if it does work out.
Yeah. Outlaw College Football, another channel member, he says Colorado is not a cultural fit then. Yeah, I mentioned them. I mean, there's a pretty large segment of conservative folks in Colorado too. That was my understanding. I could be wrong on that. Wild, you would probably know more than me. Are they really? I mean, I know they've got legal marijuana and all that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the whole state is, left leaning or whatever you want to call it. What do you think?
I think it's a politically blue state by voting and everything. But I think that they're more of a cultural fit than in California and Oregon schools. Yeah. And I mean, Colorado's been in the Big 12 before, right? And they fit before, and they have become a little bit more blue over time. But I think that's really centered in Denver and pockets of Boulder, where the campus of CU is. And the outskirts are definitely a little bit more, I would say, conservative. But it's not just all about the politics. I mean, that's a piece of this, but it's not everything.
Right. Yeah, right. And Outlaw College Football says he thinks it's overused, and maybe it is. And I think the landscape is shifting now to where it is going to be less of a factor. I think it was a major factor previously, but I think we're in the time now to where it's becoming much less of a factor, because now it's all being driven by the networks, basically, and bringing eyeballs to the TV, and who's going to bring in revenue. That's what's starting now. Academics, I think the presidents are still trying to look at academics really heavily, but I think it's getting to where that's going to matter even less as we get. Now it's just a matter of survival and keeping your athletic program and athletic department at the forefront. I mean, it's all these other things are basically going out the window almost to a degree. The stuff that used to matter in realignment aren't mattering as much anymore. And I don't know if mattering is even a word, but they don't matter as much anymore. That's how I see it anyway.
I'm curious to hear the Outlaw's thoughts on that and why he doesn't think it matters cultural fit anymore. I mean, I get it's losing significance, but I think it's huge still, because you guys, when you're in a conference with other schools, those are your peer institutions. You agree on things. It's not just athletics. There's a lot of things that you're partnering with those schools and everything. And if you don't see eye to eye with that, how's that going to work out? That's really your peers and everything. So please reconsider that. Don't just completely discount that. That's not played out. That's a factor. It might be reducing in significance, but still a main factor you want to think about in realignment. Immaculate, what's up?
Yeah, sorry about the mic issues, guys. This is a brand new mic, so I don't know why it would be crackling. It's actually a pretty nice. It's one of the more highly recommended mics out there. Actually, I just bought it 2 or 3 days ago, so I don't know, man. Sorry about that. Pretty much every mic I use gives me problems, so it must be me. But anyway, but thank you for the heads up. I don't know what to do about it, honestly.
So, Couz, what would you? So, if you were going to put a percentage on cultural fit, as far as significance and realignment, what would you say? Is it a 20% weight, and really what's going to sway things, or is it more or less? How do you see that?
I think it's in today's environment. I say it's probably 20-30%. I think at one time it was probably higher, closer to 50. Yeah. I mean, I think the main 3 things they used to look at were, this is just me looking at past history, were obviously brand, and academics, and there's 4 things: brand, which goes along with success on the field. I think those two kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Academic or TV market, academics, and culture. Those were, to me, the four things they focused on. I think now it's becoming more about brand and less about all those other things. It's now because the networks are all their buyers, like someone mentioned in the chat. I think it was Immaculate. The TV networks are the buyers, and all they care about is how much money they can make. Yeah, and they're the ones driving the train here. So those other three things are probably becoming a lot less relevant. Now, it may not be less relevant to the presidents, though. That's the key. That might be where your thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. It's losing significance, but for the presidents, it might be the most important driver, than the money behind it and everything. But I do think that is something that, to be smart about realignment and like what moves need to be made. It's not just about the dollars. It's not just about the academics, cultural fit. And then I think that also your strategic growth of your student population, where you're pulling students from. So West Virginia, imagine a lot of students are coming from West Virginia, maybe some neighboring states and everything. So you want to, be targeting and trying to get schools in those areas, right? Because those are going to pull more students in and everything else. So that's going to have to factor in too. For Utah pulls a ton of kids out of California that are undergraduates at the University of Utah. So that's going to be a factor going forward and stuff. We're going to have to change that, strategy of where we're pulling a lot of students from, because we don't have a presence now in California. That's probably always going to be there, but it's not going to be quite as big as it was. So there's a lot of things that factor into realignment, and cultural fit's just one of them.
Gotcha. All right. I have another super chat here from Big Dan T from $4.99. Thank you, Big Dan T. He says, if ACC breaks, where do y'all see Miami going? I cannot see them in the SEC. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I don't see them in the SEC either. Miami seems like a perfect fit for the Big Ten to me. I mean, if I'm the Big Ten, I'm all over that. Miami's AAU. They've got a really good brand. You're in amazing recruiting territories. You penetrate into Florida, SEC country. Oh, I think that Big Ten would want Miami very bad. So I think that they go to the Big Ten. Outside of that, it might be the Big 12, the next in line, though. I've heard at least that the SEC has bad blood with Miami, historically, for a variety of reasons. So I don't know if there's really, they get along too well out there. I don't know if that's going to matter at the end of the day, but I'm not sure that's the best fit for the SEC. But for the Big Ten, I could see it.
Yeah, Florida State has too historically, because Florida State has actually turned down the SEC a couple of times over the years, believe it or not. So I don't know if that'll play out. Like you said, I don't know how much of a role that'll play going forward, but it could. You never know. There's a lot of big egos involved in these decisions. But anyway, Vernon Sheldon Witter says, I don't see that the states of Arizona and Utah can't find a way to fit with the rest of us. If Colorado can do it, anyone can. Great point.
Oh, yeah. Arizona and Utah are going to fit. It's going to be a really easy fit. Won't be a bunch of a transition at all. You guys, Utah culture is very conservative. Like the University of Utah in Salt Lake and downtown Salt Lake is a little bit more not conservative, you could say liberal or whatever, but that's a college campus. I mean, everywhere else, the outskirts, we're in the state of Utah. It's a very conservative state. Culturally, it's an easy fit. It's a perfect fit. I mean, Utah is very similar to Kansas in a lot of ways, in the DC area and really like Topeka. So yeah, I think that it's going to be an easy integration for the Arizona schools, Utah, and of course BYU.
And by the way, CFB Plus says, so what you're saying is FSU Miami to Big 12? Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't see it happening, though. And Dave Patrick, you are out, my man. That's not going to be allowed in here.
Hey, CFB Plus, thank you for making the Holy Rivals logo. It is amazing. He helped us last week, so I wanted to give a shout out to him because I love it. I love our logo. So thanks, man.
Dave was put in timeout for a while. So Dave Patrick, if he wants to come back in, he's going to not be a troll. Let me see what we got here. I think I had another super chat. Sorry, I got distracted by the troll there. A. Gilst, hope I got your name right. Couz, Jayhawks welcome CU, Utah AU, and ASU to Big 12 all class acts. For WVU's sake, hoping your mark gets Pitt next. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Allen.
Well said, right there. I mean, that's got to be it, right? That's so. Here's a question: who's the number one target on your mark's board right now? Like in expansion, okay? He's landed everything he's wanted. He's got the four corners. We're all over. We're a big 16 now. Who's the next target? And I would say that it's probably Pitt. It seems like it.
Mm-hmm. Or Virginia Tech, maybe. Or Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville would be good because of the rivalry with Cincinnati. And they did have a little bit of somewhat of a rivalry with West Virginia. It wasn't as big as the Pitt or Virginia Tech or even Maryland for that matter, but there was a little bit of a rivalry brewing between the two schools. But that Cincinnati-Louisville rivalry is pretty big. So because the two schools are pretty close together,
mm-hmm.
I think they'd be a great add for the league, and I think they fit us culturally and academically. And then you look at, but yeah, my top choices would be Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. But Pitt and Virginia Tech first for obvious reasons. There are two big rivals. But I just don't. My feeling is wherever Virginia goes, Virginia Tech will follow them because their state attorney general has already spoken up and said he doesn't want to see them one in a more advantageous position than the other. And that's how Virginia Tech got in the ACC was the same thing. Virginia was there, and when the conferences, when they were picking teams, the ACC was poaching the Big 12 or the Big East rather. Their politicians stepped in and got Virginia Tech into the conference. So there's so much politics involved in this stuff.
It's wild. It's confusing. But look at Oregon State. Look at Washington State. I mean, the breakups happen all the time for these schools. And while that could be the case and everything, I could also see it like Virginia go to a Big 10 and Virginia Tech to look for the SEC to get an invite and maybe go to the Big 12 if that's not there. Despite what Attorney General was saying. Did you see like his claims on why he thought that he could keep those schools together? That was kind of an interesting thought process.
Who's that?
The Attorney General for Virginia.
Oh, yeah. I did, but I don't remember exactly what all he said. My understanding is basically in a nutshell, it was just he didn't want to leave. His job as the Attorney General was to look out for the best interest of both public institutions or something like that. Is that
right? And he felt like there would be a devaluing of the worth of the school if one went to a lesser conference than the Big 10 or SEC. So it would hurt the citizens of Virginia if that happened and the graduates of the other schools. So that's the legal case that he'd probably be bringing is something like that. I don't know if it would work in court or anything, but it's definitely an interesting idea that he threw out there.
Right. And Outlaw College Football, if you're still on here, dude, your super chat never showed up. And you were the only moderator on the chat, so I don't know what happened to your super chat, man. If anybody blocked it, it was YouTube, not anybody else.
Hey, Couz, can I talk to the community real quick?
Absolutely, man.
Hey, so if you guys have any questions about Utah's stance, Utah's views, or anything else, like any thoughts at all, good, bad, just throw them out there in the chat, and hopefully. I can answer those and everything and give you a real perspective. I'm not going to falsify it at all, just tell you straight up what's going on. But there's a lot of questions about why Utah fans acted the way they did in social media spaces and stuff. And this is a good platform for folks just to ask those questions, and hopefully I can answer them for them if they want to ask.
Thank you, man. Got a few more super chats here. Rumesh Lance. Thank you, Rumesh, for the $2 super chat. He says, welcome Four Corners. UNCVA next big targets. That would be great. I'd love to have those schools. Especially for me living in the southern part of the state, I can actually drive a car to those games. John Teal, $2 super chat, says, Brett wants UConn. I'm sure the East won't mind. I'd love to have UConn, but a lot of people don't agree with me, so.
Do you mind if we talk about that for a second?
Absolutely. Go for it, man.
Gonzaga.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Since we're a brand new member, less than 24 hours in, I'm not sure I can really, give a view on this. But now that we're in the conference and everything, I'm concerned about bringing in UConn and Gonzaga because we'd have to bring them in basketball only. And I'm concerned that that would create a hierarchy system within the new Big 16 conference, I'm going to call us, where you've got the football and full membership schools, and then you'd have a Gonzaga and a UConn that were partial members, B-ball only members and everything. And I feel like that would create some hierarchy issues with getting along and alignment and everything within the conference. So I'm weary of that, and I'm not sold that that's the best route to go right now. What are your thoughts about that, Couz?
I think UConn is. I'm not crazy about the basketball only editions because I've got flashbacks of the old Big East falling apart, and a big reason for that was you had. Now I know it's a different circumstance. You had half the Big East was a basketball conference that added football schools, so there was always tension between them. And when it came down to voting on specific issues, they oftentimes couldn't agree, and it came down to they couldn't agree on a TV deal, and the same thing happened. They fell apart. Football teams left and went to other conferences. Well, and the argument I've gotten from people who are okay with it is, well, you're only talking about bringing in one or two schools. But here's the thing. It only takes, depending on the decisions, there are some decisions that these conferences make. It only takes a couple different, two presidents to vote no to kill the thing. Just, it's like an 80% vote. I think you have to have 80% majority. So if you bring in too many basketball-only schools as full members of the full voting members, you're going to have a lot of clashing interests, in my opinion, in those rooms in a lot of cases. So I'll be honest, I'm not crazy about football-only schools. Basketball-only schools. If we bring UConn in, I would want to bring them in as a full member, and a lot of people don't think they would be valuable. I think they would because number one, the basketball is elite, and two, I think if given the proper resources, they can be better at football. They were when they were in the Big East, and I think they can do the same thing again. Now, are they going to be the top of the conference? Probably not, but neither was Kansas. Look how bad Kansas was at football for a long time. It didn't make them it didn't make them a non-valuable member of the conference. And then obviously we had their basketball as well to prop them up, and it would be the same thing with UConn, in my opinion. Now, the question is, with being in a conference where most of the teams are in the western part of the country, how would that impact their basketball program? Would it make it tougher for them to compete? Because of all the travel and everything that they would have to do. And would it impact recruiting? That is something you'd have to think about.
What do you think? This is a hypothetical, and it assumes the ACC is disbanded. Okay, would you rather have a UConn or a Syracuse as a full member?
I'd rather have Syracuse.
Same, I would too.
Syracuse is a more valuable brand than people realize. They bring a lot of the New York market. They're a traditional football. They used to be a football powerhouse back in the day. I wouldn't say they're a blue blood, but they were probably that next level down from the blue bloods. Yeah. I mean, Syracuse and West Virginia used to have some great battles in the Big East days. So I think Syracuse would be a great member of the league. And, they had a great basketball program. They've actually been competitive. They haven't been great. They haven't been as good in the ACC as they were in the Big East, but they were still a good basketball school, and they're competitive in football. They're not elite, but they're making bowl games most years.
Yeah.
So I think they'd be a really good ad, personally. Jeff Fuller, man, thank you for being in here. 1999 Super Chat. He says, "Love the show, Couz and WildUte. Glad the Big 12 just got a stronger and more secure. Some Couz Utes are bummed to be together, but both benefit big time from the mutual affiliation. Big week for both and Big 12. Go Couz at JJ Fuller 72. And guys, by the way, Jeff Fuller puts out some awesome graphics, some awesome data on his Twitter account. So make sure to go give him a follow at JJ Fuller 72.
Yeah, Jeff's one of the best out there. He's a numbers nerd like me. So kudos to Jeff. Hey, we got the holy word back, Jeff. We got it back in conference, big time. I'm excited for it. I know you're excited for it too. And kudos to everything you do out there. You do a great job.
All right. Got another super chat from Matt Ritson. Thank you, Matt. $1.99. He says Utah like to beat USC one more time before go Big 12.
I gotta say, guys, I hate USC so bad. I hate USC so bad. And after everything they've done to Utah now, and they're thumbing their nose at Utah, they always have, and they're thumbing their nose big time now. I cannot stand the Trojans. I want to beat them so bad this year. And I'm with you. Beat them one last time. I hope we beat them twice. I hope we beat them out there in LA, and I hope we beat them in the Pac-12 championship game and stomp them bad. So enough said on that.
There you go. I'm definitely going to be rooting for the Utes and the Wildcats and the Sun Devils, and the Buffs this year. I can tell you that. And when they play each other, I don't know who to cheer for, but I'll just try to enjoy a good game, I guess. Michael Callahan, $1.99. He says, add Miami, Virginia Tech, NC State, Pitt. Go Pokes. I think Miami's going to end up in either the SEC or the Big Ten at the end of the day. I think they're one of the top targets of the Big Ten, is my understanding, along with UNC and Virginia are targets for both conferences. But I think the Big Ten really wants Florida State and Miami primarily. I think they're really high on their list. So I look for Miami to be, they just got AAU status, which WildUte mentioned earlier. So I think they're going to be a top target for the Big Ten, to be honest.
That's a great mix of teams right there.
Holy it is.
Smokes right there.
I'd love to have them.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I think NC State would be a fun ad too.
Definitely. And like, what's funny too is like, we're talking about 20. Why aren't we talking about 24? Like, couldn't it be realistic to maybe go to a 24 team? Like,
there are people. There are people out there who think that's Yormark's plan. I've not heard anybody say that. That they know that for sure. It's just speculation, but yeah, there's a lot of people who think that might be his next plan. So we'll see. But back to the now let's talk about the Pac-12 for a minute. What do you think? I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but I'd like to dig into it a little deeper. What do you think the Pac-12's best decision going forward will be as far as how do they survive? Do you think they survive, or do you think the teams just move on?
The teams move on.
Yeah.
I don't see how there's any survival now based on the exit fees of the Mountain West and the AAC. Why would you pay an exit fee to go to the Pac-12 for the same amount of money or just a little bit more? It's that simple. I don't see how you can get around that. So I see the Pac teams going to the Mountain West or going independent. And I think that Cal and Stanford are going to scream, shout, try to get in the Big Ten, do everything. They might get their way in there for really low revenue distributions. But if they don't, then independence has to be an option for them, given especially Stanford, but Oregon State and Wazoo. If somehow they don't back their way into the new Big 12, Big 16 in some way, shape, or form, I think the Mountain West is in the cards. Yeah, so I think the Pac is going to cease to exist. There's the truth right there.
Yeah, and what concerns me about Washington State is, they're already in. We heard the comments from their president during their Board of Regents meeting a few weeks back. They're not in great financial shape anyway right now. So I fear that these schools may have to start dropping some athletic programs and things like that because of this funding reduction they're going to see. And it's, it is sad to see that. I hate it for the student athletes. It's funny. Through all of this college realignment chaos, nobody ever seems to care about the people that are actually playing the game on the field.
True. Yeah, a lot of Oregon State fans out there having a hard time, and like Oregon State fans and Ute fans are pretty close for a lot of reasons.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so kind of like a brother in some ways, and so shout out to all you guys. We care about you guys. I'm sorry that it went this way. There's just no choice at the end of the day. The Utes had to make the move over. Everyone had to jump based on the situation, but it's crappy. I'm so sorry that you're in that situation, but shout out for the Beavs and Wazoo. The Beavs are going to have a really good team this year. They're going to compete for the Pac. And honestly, if the Utes aren't going to win it, I'm going to root for the Beavs to win it and come out with a bang here. So kudos to all you guys out there, all you Beef fans.
Yeah. Vernon Sheldon Whittle says 24 divides into 4 easily. great point. You could have
Mm-hmm.
pods, or you could even have pods of 6 in that case if you wanted.
I saw Immaculate's comment. Immaculate's a 25 guy, so he likes the 25 team conferences and to split them into
Oh,
different.
okay. I was wondering where that came from.
Yeah, that's an Immaculate theory right there.
I got you. All right, Travis Anderson, $10 super chat. Thank you, man. He says, I'm sorry that a lot of Utah fans have been annoying during this transition. I'm a diehard Ute and beyond excited to be accepted to the Big 12. Getting UNC and NC State or Duke would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, but again, I think UNC ends up in either the SEC or the Big 10. Both of those schools want to be in the state of North Carolina, or conferences rather, want to be in the state of North Carolina, and they're not yet. It's a brand new footprint for them. UNC fits academically in the Big 10, and they have a valuable brand, especially when it comes to basketball. So, and Mac Brown has them doing pretty decent on the football field as well. They're no pushover by any means. So, but I do see them going to one of the Big 2 conferences, and then now Duke is an interesting case because I don't think they have the brand value necessary for the SEC. Maybe not even the Big 10. But I read an article this morning actually from 24/7 Sports that said that Duke is one team that would probably, stay attached to the ACC until they absolutely couldn't anymore. Basically, kind of like Arizona State just did, and Utah basically just did. They would do everything in their power to salvage the ACC because they don't want to break it up.
I think that you're right about UNC. They're an extremely valuable brand. Basketball brand, growing football, great territory. They're going to be wanted by the Big 10 and the SEC. They're AAU, great academics. From everything that I've heard, the SEC kind of might have first dibs on UNC, and there's some attraction there and everything. Yeah. So it's kind of where that goes. NC State is definitely a Big 12. Got to be a Big 12 target. Duke has to be too. Duke might be a school that jumps over to the Big 12 if it goes to 24. I don't know if they're going to be in the first 4, if right. Some other schools are out there. But if it goes to 24, Duke's got to be an option out there for the Big 12, and that could be a fit with NC State.
Yeah, I'd love to have NC State. NC State really intrigues me. I think NC State's one of the more undervalued schools out there, especially in the eastern part of the country.
Yeah.
I think that would be a huge add. But, again, you got politics involved. If North Carolina's government is going to want to keep those schools together, I would imagine, meaning NC State and UNC, if they can. Key is if they can.
Here's some more evidence that a lot of Ute fans are excited for this move. And there's been some conversation that some Ute fans are just kind of sad about the state of the pack. But a lot of Ute fans like me, like Travis, we're stoked to be in the Big 12 because, guys, this is the third super conference. Like, that's what happened and everything. It's fun to be a part of that. This is big time football, big time college athletics, and it's cool to be a part of.
Yeah, thank you, man. We're glad to have you. I mean, I've been saying all along, a lot of people are like, don't bring Utah in. Their fans are annoying. And I'm like, look, they're too valuable not to, man. I mean, in my opinion, when you look at the 4 that we brought in, Utah right now today is the most valuable of those 4 because of their success on the football field. Mm-hmm. They have been a really good football. I mean, they've been to 2 Rose Bowls in a row, which that's a whole nother conversation. What happens to the Rose Bowl now? Does it become a Big 12 versus Big 10 matchup?
Sure. I sure hope so, because going to the Rose Bowl is a special experience. Seriously, for any team, and if you ever get in the Rose Bowl, just being out there is surreal. It's amazing. It is, and I would love that to be a Big 12 game, and it might be. I mean, is it going to be a Big 10 championship game? Is that what they're going to do with it? Maybe, if not, splitting it with the Big 12 or the SEC. But the Rose Bowl needs to be part of college athletics. It's just too good not to be.
I agree. Trying to see if there's any more comments that either stuck out or were from my channel members. Vernon wants to go to 4 pod 6 teams if they go to 24. It makes sense.
It does. It almost makes too much sense, right? And it kind of alleviates all that pressure about the travel with UCF and West Virginia, and it seems just to be a really good fit at 24 multiple pods.
Greg Swaim says those athletes complaining about 3-hour plane rides. My youngest is on a bus that long for his college basketball games. If you don't like it, no one forcing you to play D1.
There's some real talk right there, Greg.
Yeah, Greg doesn't hold back. That's one thing you say about Greg. He's going to spit what he thinks.
Greg, I would just say this though: these D1 athletes are now, some of them are millionaires with NIL, so it's not the same. So
Yeah,
you have to treat them like millionaires, like little kind of prima donnas.
we're living in a different world now, Greg. Badger and Bournemouth fan. Did I say that right? Yeah, Bournemouth. Burnham-mouth. I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyway, thank you for the $5 super chat. It says, "I'm a Big Ten fan, but think this is horrible for college football. How is anyone not in the SEC or Big Ten going to compete with the money difference?" And that's kind of everybody's complaint right now. That's not in those two conferences anyway. And even people that are like you, Badger and Burnham-mouth fan, even a lot of people in those conferences realize it. My buddy that was on here a minute ago, Outlaw College Football, has said it multiple times. You know, he's a fan of an SEC team, but he does not want to see football become irrelevant west of the Rockies. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for parity in the sport. I mean, if we see a P2 breakaway, which a lot of people think we will eventually, it's going to make a lot of fans stop caring about college football. That's the fear, you know. So yeah, I get it. It is bad. You know, us Big 12 folks are celebrating right now because we're on the good side of this for once. But I think most of us do see the negative of this too, and how bad it is for the sport as a whole. What do you say to that, WildUte?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. The equalizer here, though, for some schools is NIL funds. NIL war chests, like your collective war chests. Guys, 80% of recruiting now is the NIL. I mean, Kyle Whittingham, head coach of the Utes, said that. Kenny Dillingham, ASU's head coach, has said that. It's everything now in recruiting. Kids want NIL contracts, they want NIL money. And so if you're not in the P2, you need to build up a war chest, and the boosters need to fund collectives. Like, no one wants to hear that, but it's the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, and if you want to compete with those P2 conferences and win playoff games, then you're going to have to get the kids paid. And like, so you have to really fund those collectives and NIL. And that's the only thing that can equal this thing for the Big 12.
And if it goes to, and you know, West Virginia is trying really hard to do that. They built up a really good NIL collective in Country Roads Trust.
Yeah.
They've had some really successful promotions the last few months. They just came out with their own beer, where they get 15% of the proceeds from a beer and it has been selling like hotcakes, man.
Really?
Yes. They're one of only 6 collectives to have a beer
awesome.
collaboration. I told them I need to get a moonshine on board now, because that's, you know, that fits our reputation. But yeah, it's doing really well. So, and obviously the players cannot be involved in it. They can't advertise or anything like that because it's alcohol.
Yeah.
But the collective can. The collective can, and of course the collective can take that money and help the athletes. Right. That's how the whole thing works. But yeah,
I think that's the way to equalize. And so a school like, here's a curious case, like SMU, right? They're not even in the Big 12. Like, they're probably going to be in the American still, but they've got a massive war chest of NIL funds. That was like the big selling point for going to the Pac, is like, and so if they can just get a huge war chest to pay a lot of money to players through NIL, then that might be able to field like a super team or like a really good team that can compete like in a playoff game. And so I think that's the great equalizer. So it's all about how much we want to try to fund up, you know, for our schools, you know, outside of just like paying for tickets. It's kind of on us now to build those war chests. Yeah.
And, you know, and if there's a big push out there by some groups to make college athletes employees of these universities.
Yeah.
And if that happens, the Big 12, and if the ACC survives, those two conferences may not be able to afford to pay their players like the Big 10 and SEC. That's another huge concern, I think, going forward, as to why. And that's why a lot of people, too, think there's going to be a P2 breakaway at some point, because there's just going to be, you know, if you're a player, do you want to go to the school and they become employees? Do I want to go where I can make the most money, right?
Okay.
But again, back to your point about the NIL collectives, can the NIL collective step in? The NIL collectives in the Big 12 and while it's still around the ACC are going to have to just go above and beyond and you know, knock it out of the park, so to speak, and find creative ways in legal ways, obviously within the rules to help out these athletes, because it's like you said, it's the only way you can really equalize everything.
If really the move is to pay players directly from the school, if legislation goes that way, you're right. If you're not in the P2, you're screwed because you just don't have the funds there, like the revenues coming in from the media rights. Like that's going to change the game completely. Right now, collectives can bridge that gap, but yeah, I don't know if it can be bridged if that legislation rolls through, unless there's maybe some salary cap or some equalizing factor that we're not even talking about that is thought out. But it's a major concern.
Yeah. New channel member Travis Anderson. Travis, we thank you for joining up to the VIP club here at Couz's Corner. So the next live stream I do, your name will be added to the scroll at the bottom, whether it be a club level or pub level member. It obviously doesn't show me yet which level you signed up on, so forgive me for not knowing that. But it will be on there next time, man. And I appreciate you joining up and finding value in what I'm doing here. So thanks a lot, man. It means a lot. John Teal has another super chat. He says, Pitt, Louisville, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, UConn, North Carolina State, Washington State, Oregon State. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah,
I want to bring Oregon State along. Anything that includes Oregon State.
What about you don't like Wazoo?
I like Wazoo. Yeah, I've got some family members that went to Wazoo and everything. They got passionate fans. They just don't have a lot of them, but they are very passionate. But Oregon State fans are diehard, very diehard and stuff. And so I feel a little bit more brotherly love with the Beavs. But I'd love to bring them both along. Yeah.
Yeah, I said last night on Twitter, it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if the Big 12 throws them a life raft, man.
Yeah.
I feel for their fan base. Cody Cutright says, so if Pack is done, what happens with bowl games that is set for Pack? That's I saw on Twitter this morning. I don't remember what reporter put it out there, but he's like, I guarantee you all these bowls are on the phones today trying to figure out what to do and what conferences they're going to be affiliated with. So that's a question everybody has right now, Cody, man. It's kind of up in the air at this point, I think, to be honest.
What's the future of bowls, and like this new playoff era, right? Like, I mean, our bowls, Goose bowls, let's cut these pack bowls out. I don't know. Like, it just seems like bowls are becoming less and less relevant. And like in the 12-team playoff, just imagine that. I mean, how many people are going to watch bowl games when you're watching that many games in a playoff? Yeah. So we'll see the future of bowls. I kind of wish that conference championship games would be bowl games. Like and make that some type of bowl game, or if you can, mix that in some way, shape, or form, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think at some point we may see something like that. To be honest, because I don't know how else you're going to continue down this path without doing something like that, something creative in order to keep the bowls alive, but yet somehow tie it into the playoff system, or they need to mean more. You know what I mean? They need to mean more than just, hey, we're going to play this game that really doesn't mean anything.
What about bowls? Like, here's an idea. What about bowls like opening weeks of the college football season? I mean, I know that like you wouldn't have a record to go to a bowl, but like, what if you did the bowl games, but it was like week 1 versus a non-con? I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could still have like the idea of a bowl to go travel and have fun with the bowl and stuff, but not really, have it at the back end of the season when the playoffs going on. So, yeah.
Andrew Barchak, $4.99 says 6 East ACC teams: Virginia Tech, NC State, Pitt, Miami, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and then 2 West teams: San Diego State and Oregon State. Hey, I like that too. I'd be okay with all that. I'd love it.
I would love that too. San Diego State would be a great ad. I mean, for Colorado, the Arizona schools, and Utah recruit heavy out of SoCal, Southern California. So that would be a massive deal for the new ads that have just jumped over to the Big 12, the Four Corners. So I'll be on board, definitely.
Daniel Gigak says, thank you for the super chat, my friend. He says the TV contract money doesn't affect NIL money.
Yep.
You're right. It does not. That's why these schools that aren't getting big TV money has to use, NIL can be their differentiation. They can differentiate themselves with NIL maybe. Like I said, they have to be creative in ways they do it. They have to find new and different ways to raise money, and they might have to rely on somebody like, for example, a Brett Yormark, who can find different ways to bring in different revenue streams to the league versus just TV money. They're going to have to think outside the box. It's it's a different day and age. It's a business now, and anybody that doesn't accept that is going to get left behind. And I think that was part of the Pac-12's problem. I think they were too late to recognize it as a business and kept wanting to hold on to old traditions and old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And it just led to their collapse, unfortunately.
So yeah, TV contract money is not the same as NIL money, but think about there's some interrelation here too. Okay, so like if you're in the P2 and you're getting all the exposure, then just imagine that you're always on TV. People are excited about your brand. You're on ABC all the time, Fox and stuff. Your fan base is going to be more excited, go to your games, there'll be more juice around the games, more people are going to be willing to donate to NIL causes. So they're not completely unrelated to it. And so, yeah, it's really about exposure and excitement, really, for NIL collectives.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, it is about it because the more you're on TV, the more your face is out there, your name's out there. Makes you. That's a great point, WildUte. So they're not necessarily directly connected, but they're indirectly connected.
Yep.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Exactly. I am. If I'm an Alabama fan, and we're going to win the championship, and all my games are on CBS and stuff, I'm stoked. I'm jacked, and I'm going to be giving more money on the side to the NIL collective and everything. Whereas if Alabama sucked for a couple of years, then I'm like, I don't really need it, right? Like it's just kind of playing off human emotion and giving your money.
Jacob Yoho says Marshall would be a good ad. They just beat Notre Dame. Holy smoke!
Heck yeah,
Jacob, I love you, man, but that's going too far.
Shout out for the Marshall game, man. Seriously,
somebody put something out on Twitter. I think it was this morning, and it actually was a great point. There's actually a chance because of the new college football playoff expansion. Marshall could potentially get into a college football playoff before West Virginia does. I said, if that happens, every West Virginia fan will have to just stay off social media for like a year because Marshall fans would never shut up about it.
That would be quite amazing, yeah. And unless Randy Moss comes back in the building somehow, we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah, I mean, the Sun Belt could potentially get that. I think what they were saying, the Sun Belt could get that one G5 spot in the auto bid. And West Virginia may not get one. I think that was. They're going to have a lot of competition, though. I think Boise State and UTSA, Tulane, some of these other schools are going to have something to say about that. But I will say this: I do think Charles Huff has Marshall moving in the right direction, and they are winning, pretty consistently there in Huntington.
What does this mean now for like the 6 best conference champions getting into the playoff? And the Pac's probably not going to exist anymore, right? The ACC is in major trouble. Like, is that going to have to be rethought out because 2 former A5 conferences are probably not going to be around anymore? I mean, what's going to change with that? Like with those bids?
Yeah, that's a big question. Actually, I think it was Ross Dellinger maybe put out a tweet, and it may not have been Ross. I could be wrong, but one of the national reporters put out a tweet late last night saying that they've already started preliminary discussions, or there have already been a couple of school presidents, rather, I think, that want to look at the CFP model now and go, instead of doing 6 auto bids, they want to go to 5 auto bids, or at least do something to change it. So it's just, there's not been any serious discussions about it yet, but they do think that is going to be something down the road that may get changed. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
Matador Mike, man, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. He says, I'm excited about the new teams. If nothing happens with the ACC, add UConn and Memphis for more East teams, both good in basketball and have a football team. I'm on board. I've been on board saying I want UConn. I'm not as excited about Memphis, but you know what? They do have a fair argument. If they can prove that they're going to invest in football, which I think they're finally starting to do a little bit with the new stadium upgrades and things like that, then I think they would be an attractive ad. I'm just, like I said earlier in the show, and Mike, you may not have been on here, man, but I think the days of a group of 5 team getting into Power 5 might be done, man. As bad as I hate to say it, unless you get into a newly revamped pack and they keep their Power 5 status. I just don't know, man. I just don't know that the TV networks have any more desire to bring in any G5 teams. I mean, look for the Big 12, for example. Fox refused, and ESPN both refused to give any pro rata money for any G5 teams. They said, we're not giving you any money unless you bring in a Power 5 team. So really raiding the pack was the Big 12's only option for expansion right now without diluting the money of these existing members. So if you're a Memphis fan, I hate it for you because I do think you guys have done a lot. You have a passionate fan base. They've had a really good basketball program. I mean, one of the best in the country, really, over the past, couple decades, really, maybe longer. And then the football program has had some success. So it really sucks for teams like Memphis, like Boise State, like UConn, teams that really are good enough to be Power 5 teams in a lot of ways. They just, unfortunately, they missed their window, and it's sad to say, but
there's consolidation happening, and it's hard to see who gets in now. The A5 schools are just trying to survive. I mean, look at Oregon State and Washington State. There's going to be more that are left out, unfortunately. So they're kind of that's the pecking order with your schools like Memphis and UConn too. But I'll say this, like being an outsider now, being inside the Big 12, if Brett Yormark recommends that and he thinks that's the play, the guy's gold. I mean, I believe it. I'm not doubting him. So if he thinks that's the play, then let's do it.
Yeah. Nimble Narwhal's on board with you that you need to bring in Oregon State.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've been on here for an hour and 22 minutes, 400 people. Guys, I appreciate all the support. Appreciate you guys being in here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to more chats, but with this many people, it's impossible. And I don't want to leave people out, so it's best just not to try to read too many. But obviously, other than super chats, that's why those super chats are important, guys. Make sure your comment gets read. But I want to thank WildUte for coming on. WildUte, one more time, let everybody know where they can find you at on YouTube.
Yeah, shout out to all you guys. Over 1,000 chat comments. I love that. That's what we're here for. We're in these communities to talk about stuff. Now we're in this Big 12 community. It's so fun. It's awesome. But you can find me at the Holy Rivals. That's the show that I do with Nathan Bomber Brown. So we do that shows every Monday night and Saturday afternoon. So that's the Holy Rivals. You can find us out. It's BYU Utah content, now Big 12 content. And Couz, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, no problem. And I'm sorry about the microphone, guys. I don't know what else to do. I bought a brand new microphone, an upper tier microphone, and I'm still having issues. So, to be honest, don't know what else to do. It's the only computer I got, so I got to deal with it. Well, guys, thanks again for coming on. Thank you for all the support. Thanks for hanging with us for this hour and a half almost. And I can use sign language, I guess. But yeah, go check out WildUte. I've got his Twitter handle at the bottom as well, at WildUte on Twitter.
Yep. Go
follow him. And thanks again, guys. I couldn't thank you enough. I'm very, very humbled by the support here and the generosity of you guys today. And make sure to hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet. And subscribe to the channel and subscribe to the Big 12 Mafia and Holy Rivals show. Perfect. Thank you, guys. We're out. Q Country Roads.